I always thought family curses were the stuff of gothic novels until I inherited a music box that changed everything I believed about fate, family, and the invisible forces that shape our lives. My name is Elena, and this is the story of how I discovered that some inheritances come with a price too terrible to imagine. It began 3 months after my grandmother Rosalia's funeral in October 2023. I was 26, working as a museum curator in Portland, Oregon, living what I thought was a normal, uncomplicated life. Rosalia had been the matriarch of our Italian-American family, a woman who spoke in whispers about old country superstitions, and crossed herself whenever certain topics came up in conversation. The family had gathered at her Victorian house in Salem to divide her belongings. Most of the valuable items, antique furniture, jewelry, artwork had been claimed by my aunts and uncles. I was left sorting through boxes of what everyone considered junk, old photographs, letters written in Italian, religious artifacts, and various trinkets that seemed significant to Rosalia but meaningless to the rest of us. In the dusty basement, behind a trunk full of mothballed dresses, I found a small wooden box I'd never seen before. It was roughly the size of a jewelry box, carved from dark walnut with intricate Celtic knots etched into its surface. The wood was worn smooth by countless hands, and there was something about its weight and craftsmanship that suggested age and importance. Inside was a music box, but unlike any I'd ever encountered. The dancing figure wasn't a ballerina or princess, it was a woman in a flowing black dress, her arms outstretched as if embracing the darkness around her. The melody it played was haunting and unfamiliar, a minor key composition that seemed to echo longer than the mechanisms should have allowed. Beneath the music box was an envelope with my name written in Rosalia's spidery handwriting. For Elena, when you are ready to understand. Inside the envelope was a letter dated 2 years earlier. My dearest Elena, if you are reading this, I am gone, and the burden passes to you. I had hoped this terrible inheritance would die with me, but the signs have shown me otherwise. The music box has chosen you as it chose me when I was your age, as it chose my mother before me. You must learn what I could never bring myself to tell you while I lived. Our family carries a curse, passed down through the women for 7 generations. It is not superstition, cara mia. It is real, and it is hungry. Look for the pattern. You will see it now that you know to look. The women in our family do not live ordinary lives. We love desperately and lose tragically. We achieve great things and pay terrible prices. We are blessed with gifts and cursed with knowledge that destroys peace. The music box is both prison and key. Guard it well, for as long as it remains in our family's possession, the curse is contained. But Elena, you must understand the curse is not punishment for some ancient sin. It is the price of power that runs in our blood. I pray you will find the strength I never had to break this cycle. With all my love and deepest apologies, Nona Rosalia. I read that letter 5 times before setting it aside, convinced that my grandmother's final years had been clouded by dementia or depression. Family curses were fairy tale nonsense, dramatic stories people invented to explain ordinary misfortunes and coincidences. But that night, alone in my apartment with the music box sitting on my kitchen table, I began to remember things I'd dismissed or forgotten. My family had always been marked by tragedy wrapped in beauty. My great-great-grandmother Maria had been an acclaimed opera singer who died in a theater fire at age 28, just as her career reached its peak. Her daughter, my great-grandmother Isabella, became a renowned artist whose paintings now hung in galleries across Europe, but she spent her final 20 years in an asylum, claiming her artwork painted itself while she slept. My great-grandmother Francesca was a brilliant mathematician who made groundbreaking discoveries about probability theory, but she lost 3 children to accidents so statistically improbable that newspapers called them impossible coincidences. My grandmother Rosalia had been a gifted healer whose herbs and remedies helped hundreds of people until she accidentally poisoned her own husband while trying to cure his illness. Each generation, extraordinary women who achieved remarkable things, then paid devastating prices for their success. I started researching our family history more systematically, diving into records I'd never bothered to examine. What I found made my blood run cold. The pattern went back even further than Rosalia's letter had indicated. In 1847, my ancestor Lucia Bellacorte had been accused of witchcraft in a small Italian village after correctly predicting a series of disasters that befell anyone who wronged her family. She'd been executed, but not before cursing her accusers with words that were still repeated in local folklore. "As you have taken my life, so shall my daughters take yours. 7 generations of my blood shall wield power you cannot comprehend, and that power shall be both gift and punishment." 7 generations. I was the 7th. The music box began to exhibit strange behaviors almost immediately. It would play its melody at random times 3:33 a.m., during thunderstorms, whenever I was experiencing strong emotions. The dancing figure would sometimes turn to face me directly, which should have been mechanically impossible given the fixed nature of the music box mechanism. More disturbing were the effects it seemed to have on my life. Within a week of bringing the box home, I received an unexpected promotion at the museum, offered the opportunity to curate a major exhibition on Italian folk magic, a topic I'd never studied but somehow found myself incredibly knowledgeable about. My romantic life, which had been a series of pleasant but unremarkable relationships, suddenly intensified. David, a man I'd been casually dating for 2 months, became obsessed with me overnight. He showed up at my apartment with expensive gifts, wrote me poetry, and declared his undying love with an intensity that felt both thrilling and terrifying. But the gifts came with costs. The museum exhibition was successful beyond anyone's expectations, but my predecessor, the curator who should have received the promotion, was diagnosed with early onset dementia at age 42. David's obsession with me led him to quit his job and abandon his friends, becoming increasingly unstable and possessive. I began to understand what Rosalia meant about loving desperately and losing tragically. The psychological toll was immense. Every good thing that happened to me felt tainted by the knowledge that someone else was paying the price. I found myself avoiding success, sabotaging relationships, and isolating myself to prevent the curse from affecting the people I cared about. But isolation only made the curse stronger. The music box became more active, its melody more insistent. I began having dreams where the dancing figure stepped out of the box and spoke to me in languages I didn't recognize but somehow understood. "You cannot escape what you are," she would say in these dreams. 7 generations of women have tried to deny their nature, to suppress their power. Each has failed, and each has suffered for fighting against her destiny instead of embracing it. The dreams provided historical context that research couldn't offer. I saw my ancestors not as victims of tragedy, but as women who possessed genuine supernatural abilities, precognition, healing, the power to influence reality through will and intention. The curse wasn't external punishment, it was the inevitable consequence of having power in a world that feared and destroyed powerful women. The turning point came when I decided to test the extent of my abilities. During a particularly difficult day at work, I focused intensely on wanting our museum's funding problems to resolve themselves. Within hours, we received an anonymous donation of $500,000, exactly the amount we needed to complete our expansion project. But that evening, I learned that the donor was a local businessman who had liquidated his children's college funds to make the donation, claiming he'd received a divine vision about the importance of supporting Italian cultural preservation. The pattern was clear. My will, focused with sufficient intensity, could reshape reality. But every change created ripple effects that harmed innocent people. The curse wasn't that I had power, it was that I couldn't use power without causing collateral damage. I spent months researching ways to break generational curses, consulting everyone from Catholic priests to modern witches to quantum physicists exploring consciousness and reality manipulation. Most dismissed my story as delusion or grief-induced fantasy. Those who took me seriously offered solutions that either didn't work or made the situation worse. A Santeria priestess in Miami performed an elaborate cleansing ritual that temporarily silenced the music box but caused me to lose all sense of intuition and emotional connection for weeks. A physics professor at Portland State University who studied anomalous phenomena suggested the curse might be a form of quantum entanglement between family members across time, but her proposed experiments would have required exposing other family members to potential harm. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: my 16-year-old cousin Sophia, who had always been the family's skeptic about known as weird superstitions. Sophia visited me in March 2024, ostensibly to help with a school project about family history, but I suspected she'd heard rumors about my research and was curious. When I showed her the music box, her reaction was immediate and visceral. "Oh," she said quietly, "so you got it too." "Got what?" "The dreams. The knowing things before they happen. The way people do whatever you need them to do when you really, really want it." She looked at the dancing figure with recognition, not fear. I was wondering when someone would finally talk about it openly. Sophia had been experiencing similar phenomena for 2 years but had never connected it to family history or supernatural causes. She thought everyone had occasional prophetic dreams and the ability to influence outcomes through intense focus. What seemed like a terrible curse to me felt like natural abilities to her. "Maybe," Sophia said, studying Rosalia's letter, "the curse isn't having these powers. Maybe the curse is thinking they're bad." Her insight reframed everything. The women in our family weren't victims of supernatural punishment, they were victims of cultural conditioning that taught them to fear and suppress abilities that could be incredible gifts if properly understood and ethically applied. The real curse was the generational trauma of believing we were fundamentally wrong, dangerous, or evil. Each woman had internalized shame about her power, leading to self-sabotage, isolation, and ultimately tragedy. The music box wasn't the source of the curse, it was a repository of our family's collective fear and self-hatred. Working with Sophia, I began to explore our abilities from a perspective of curiosity rather than terror. We practiced focusing our intentions on positive outcomes that wouldn't harm others, healing sick plants, helping lost animals find their way home, encouraging our family members to make healthier choices without coercing them. The results were remarkable. When approached with ethical intention and careful consideration of consequences, our abilities became tools for genuine good. I could sense which museum artifacts had historical significance that wasn't obvious from documentation. Sophia could intuitively understand what her friends needed during difficult times and provide exactly the right support. The music box's melody became less haunting and more beautiful as we shifted our relationship with our inheritance. The dancing figure still moved, but her gestures seemed celebratory rather than mournful. Breaking the cycle required acknowledging that power isn't inherently good or evil, it's neutral force that reflects the character and intentions of the person wielding it. The tragedy in our family history wasn't caused by supernatural punishment, but by generations of women who were taught to hate themselves for being different, powerful, and potentially dangerous. I've started documenting our family's true history, not as a series of cursed tragedies but as a lineage of extraordinary women who possessed real abilities in cultures that demanded they hide or deny their nature. The curse was society's inability to accept women with power, not some ancient supernatural decree. Sophia and I are teaching other family members about their potential gifts while emphasizing ethical responsibility and emotional intelligence. We're breaking the pattern of isolation and shame that turned gifts into curses for 7 generations. The most important lesson from this experience is that generational trauma often disguises itself as supernatural curse. The real magic isn't in ancient spells or mysterious music boxes, it's in breaking cycles of shame, fear, and self-destruction that get passed down through families like invisible inheritances. Today, I still own the music box, but it sits openly on my mantelpiece rather than hidden in a dark corner. The melody it plays sounds like a lullaby now, and the dancing figure seems to move with joy rather than sorrow. Sophia visits regularly, and we're writing a book about our family's history that future generations can read without fear. The curse is broken not because we destroyed it, but because we chose to see our inheritance as gift rather than burden, power rather than punishment, legacy rather than liability. Do you carry generational burdens that feel like curses? Have you ever wondered if family patterns of tragedy or struggle might be cycles waiting to be broken rather than supernatural punishment? Because sometimes the most powerful magic is choosing to see yourself as blessed rather than cursed, gifted rather than damned. What would you do if you discovered that what your family called a curse was actually an extraordinary gift that generations of women had been taught to fear?